Hey everybody, happy Friday. Hopefully everybody is having a positive and productive Friday, ending out the week on a good footing. This is JJ back again for, of course, the ASUS PC DIY live stream where we talk about the latest and greatest from ASUS in the last week. So we've got a good amount of updates this week. We're going to be talking about some brand new routers. If you're going to be able to kind of be interested in terms of upgrading your Wi-Fi, we've got actually two brand new Wi-Fi 6 routers, one at a really amazing price point, actually the lowest Wi-Fi 6 router in terms of the price point that we've ever had within our lineup, right at $100. And then we've got a really great option with a new addition in terms of a TUF gaming unit, which I really think for a lot of you is probably going to be one of the absolute best options, especially if you're coming over from Wi-Fi 5 and moving into Wi-Fi 6 with the new TUF Gaming AX5400, which will be coming in at about twice the price, at about $200. In addition to that, we've got a really cool mini PC that we're going to be talking about, the PL63, which is actually utilizing Intel's 11th gen mobile series processor parts, which really packs in an impressive level of performance when we talk about a very small, compact system, and some really exciting things for the mini PC space, where we're getting, of course, Thunderbolt 4, 2.5 gigabit LAN, Wi-Fi 6E, and even PCI Express Gen 4 M.2 compatibility, along with a bit higher overall package power for that CPU compared to some of our other mini PC offerings. We're going to be talking about over 25 watts, so actually a very capable and high-performing mini PC system. So we've got those three products to talk about, and of course your guys' questions and anything you guys are looking for. And if we've got a bit of time, we'll also end up jumping into the PC DIY Builder Spotlight and checking out what's cool in terms of your guys' builds that you've submitted to be able to have showcased here on the PC DIY stream. So with that, let's get ready to jump into it. Let's see who we've got on the stream. Hey, Erica, thanks for joining us here on the stream. Happy to have you here. Hey, as well, Dead BC77, fantastic to have you here on the stream. So first and foremost, let's get ready to go ahead and talk about some of our general updates. So give me 1 second here and get this loaded up for you guys. So first and foremost, let's go ahead and touch on UEFI releases. So for those of you that are aware, essentially, normally about every week, I will usually post UEFI updates. So our UEFI updates are essentially firmware updates for our motherboards. So let me actually show you what I'm talking about here, guys. I've got... here we go. So our UEFI releases, these are going to be for Intel and AMD-based motherboards. This week, we haven't necessarily had a huge number of releases, but there's going to be quite a number of updates. Again, if you're interested, make sure to check out the PCDIY Group, which is linked in the description if you're checking us out on Facebook or you're checking us out on YouTube. If not, I'll drop it, link it to the chat there in a moment. But just check under the featured announcements post, and you'll be able to see all the motherboards that have essentially been updated in the last week. A good number of the motherboards are actually going to be for our Z690 series. We're releasing the new 700 UEFI releases, which are going to phase in a couple of cool introductions, especially for our boards that feature AIOC technology and a couple of other things. Not necessarily what I refer to as a critical release, but for anybody that's adopting into a new platform, generally my rule of thumb, while normally I don't recommend that you update the firmware or update the UEFI BIOS if your system is stable and reliable and not experiencing any issues, for brand new platforms, I actually do recommend sometimes being a little bit more, I'd say, flexible as far as consideration to update your UEFI firmware. And generally within the first 3 months is usually going to be my recommendation to update your firmware if there's a newer release that's made available. But then again, if everything is running smoothly without any issues, of course, you don't have to update the UEFI. So outside of the Z690, there's a couple of other updates for X299, Z590, I think Z490, Z390. I don't think any AMD-based motherboards, but again, just make sure to go ahead and check in the PCDIY group under featured announcements if you're interested in checking out any of the motherboards that have new UEFI firmware releases for this week. All right, see if we got any questions on that side. Waiting for the router topic. Yeah, fantastic. We've actually got a dedicated stream that I did not that long ago. It was, I think, a few months ago that specifically talked about Wi-Fi 6 and 2.5 gigabit networking. So if you actually want to get a little bit of a deeper dive, I'd recommend checking out that stream. It is on demand. You can check it out, I believe, on Facebook and on YouTube. But feel free, if you've got any questions, go ahead and drop them in, and I'll definitely try to give you guys some insight in terms of better understanding why it makes sense, to maybe upgrade from Wi-Fi 5 to Wi-Fi 6, and ultimately some of the things you might want to keep in mind when it comes to wireless. Hey, Jeremiah, fantastic, man. Happy to have you here on the stream. Thanks so much for joining in. Oh yeah, RT-AC68U, it's still a very solid unit. Hey, Kevin, Fantastic to have you here on the stream, man. Thank you so much. Hey, Matthew, this is a really great question, and we'll talk about this in a little bit when we actually get into the router. So I'll make sure to make a note of it in regards to how you actually want to pick your router in relation to your internet service provider speed and how that can actually play out when it comes to picking the router. So really good question. Make sure to go ahead and keep it tuned, and we're going to get your question answered. Okay. So now that we've gone ahead and covered here our UEFI announcements, there are a couple of other things that I do want to touch on as well. So give me 1 second here. Open up my, I think, a document landing page. And for some of you that have been checking out our 1440p monitors, as well as kind of had interest in HDMI 2.1, we have also gone ahead and launched a new website that consolidates essentially all the information for those of you that are interested in an HDMI 2.1 enabled monitor. Now, HDMI 2.1 is kind of interesting. There's been a lot of people that have kind of been waiting for this specification in monitors. It's not really that critical into the PC space because, of course, we have DisplayPort, which allows us to run high resolution and high refresh rates simultaneously. Specifically for some of the console crowd, they've kind of been thinking that they have to have this to be able to run high refresh rate at higher resolutions. And this is where actually things get a little bit tricky. Depending on the console that you're running, you might not actually really need HDMI 2.1 at all. The vast majority of consoles that are going to be running at 120 frames a second for their game engines are generally running them at HD resolutions. You don't need HDMI 2.1 to run that. In fact, many of our monitors right now can give you that exact experience. So if you want to be able to run, 120 hertz at 1080p, which is what many of these games that are offering higher refresh rates are running at, you only actually need your standard HDMI 2.0 interface. You do want to verify, though, that the monitor supports running that higher refresh rate on the HDMI port as opposed to DisplayPort, because depending on your monitor, different monitors have different connections, and different connections will support different refresh rates. But if for some reason you're super specific on wanting to have HDMI 2.1, well, we've got you covered with a couple of new monitors that have recently launched. So let me go ahead and show you this site here. And I will drop this in the chat as well. So you can see right here, it says, battle ready monitors for your next gen gaming. And you can see right here, we've got the different monitors that currently have this specification present. So you can see the PG32UQ. This is a fantastic monitor. It's maybe my overall favorite monitor in the high-end enthusiast segment right now from its size, the resolution, its display HDR performance. The XG43UQ is going to be a really great option for those that you're almost looking kind of like for a television size type replacement, but having a monitor. So this is a really great option. It has 10-watt speakers. It even comes included with a remote control and some other really cool options. We've actually covered this monitor in some prior streams. So if you want to find out more information, check out some of those streams. Or if you've got questions, feel free and tag me in the group or tag me here in the stream. I'm see if we can answer them for you. And then we've also got probably the most recent one right here, the VG28UQ L1A, which just recently launched. And this, I think, for a lot of people is going to be also a very popular option. I think coming in at $800, 4K, a little bit larger size than your traditional 27-inch 4K, but then also offering that high refresh rate and that HDMI 2.1 technology. You'll see a lot of the other features and functions that we have here. Here's your kind of your full spec breakdown, and of course links to being able to actually purchase the monitor. So all that good stuff. And you'll also see some other links down here where you can see view all 120 hertz console ready monitors. So you remember how I talked a little bit earlier about how you don't necessarily need to jump to HDMI 2.1 if you're going to be using this on a console, or you kind of want that flexibility of going between a PC and a console. All right. So that covers us there. Let me make sure and link that for you in the chat. All right, we've got that in the chat for you guys. So let me just see if we've got any other questions right here. Oh, awesome, Kevin. I've got the AXE11000. It works as a NAS too. It saves all my gameplay footage. Kevin's actually talking about this router right here. It's pretty much our flagship router supporting Wi-Fi 6 and Wi-Fi 6E. And one of the cool things we'll actually talk a little bit about when we get into talking about routers is that you can use them like a NAS because they do have high-speed USB 3 ports on them. And one of the benefits of actually higher performing routers now is that they have actually much faster processing chips built in them. And this actually allows the USB ports to be much faster than they were in the past. When we talk about Wi-Fi 5, many of the actual USB ports were only rated for maybe about 20 to sometimes like 40 megabytes a second. But now you can see 50, 60, 100 plus megabytes read and write performance on your router. So if you connect something like an external drive to the USB ports, you can use this like a locally attached storage device, and it's a really great option for you to be able to kind of put your photos, your videos, your music, anything that you want access to in your network. And you can even make your own cloud-based drive using our ASUS AI Cloud technology. So if you don't want to have to be limited to kind of using somebody else's cloud, and you kind of want to set up your own cloud, that is actually something that you can do. So really cool point there, Kevin. Thanks for talking about that. Hey James, I recently bought an ASUS motherboard, AM Gen 3 CPU. Does ASUS still offer the Windows BIOS utility? It works within Windows 10. No, we don't actually offer that utility. But if you actually check out my recent 12th gen overclocking video, actually I show you how you can easily reboot to the UEFI without having to actually spam or consistently hit the delete key. You can actually easily do this within Windows by actually just going to the advanced recovery mode options and then selecting firmware boot. So it's a two-stage process. It's very simple and it's automated. I use this all the time so that I don't have to consistently press the delete key on my keyboard to be able to access my UEFI. So I just pretty much force myself into the recovery environment. I click UEFI boot, and then I can always be assured that I'm going to boot straight into the UEFI. So that is the preferred option. That being noted, I actually have talked to our team and hopefully look to be able to reintroduce this feature maybe as an update for some of our motherboards, but that is not a confirmed, I'd say, kind of planned development right now in terms of relaunching that base utility. But thanks for being part of Team ASUS, and man, best of luck with your build. Oh, fantastic. Dalton says that he also has an AX1100. It's going great so far. He also got an AX5400, and he's setting up a mesh network. Yeah, and we'll definitely talk about that too. One of the really cool things with our ASUS routers is that pretty much almost all of them support our ASUS AI mesh technology, which means that you can take one router and let's say maybe you got another one. Maybe not right under your desk like me, but maybe you have another router, and you can go ahead and pair those two together and be able to actually create your own mesh network. And there are going to be some benefits to actually why you might potentially want to do that, but we'll also talk about actually how traditional routers still can actually offer quite a number of benefits compared to a mesh network, which have become really popular over the last couple of years. But at the end of the day, we offer both configurations. If you want to buy a prepackaged kind of mesh-based setup, we got you covered with Zen Wi-Fi based units, or we have our traditional routers, which also all support being able to be set up in a mesh network. So kind of either which way, we got you covered. All right, so it looks like we've got those questions answered there. So let's go ahead and keep moving things along here. Give me 1 second here. HDMI 2.1 and our UEFI updates. Okay, great. I think that covers the main items that I want to touch on there, and we will keep moving this along. Let me see right here. Let's we got a new question right here. Let's see. How good is a Wi-Fi 6E router compared to an Ethernet connection regarding latency? That's a really good question. Actually, Wi-Fi 6 in general, along with Wi-Fi 6E, can offer pretty much effectively comparable latency performance to gigabit Ethernet. You won't really see a large differential with that. So you don't have to be concerned from a latency perspective. And when you talk about from a bandwidth perspective, Wi-Fi 6, it really depends on actually the range. And we'll probably show some charts here to maybe help to explain this a little bit more clearly. But with an Ethernet cable, the performance that you have is essentially guaranteed, whether it's at 10 feet, 25 feet, 100 feet, 150 feet away. That's not how it is with, of course, wireless. With wireless, the closer that you are to the router, the higher the performance for the router. And then the further you are away, the lower that actual speed becomes, right? And that's important to keep in mind because that also helps you to kind of know how much router you quote unquote need in relation to your internet service provider. Because you could start off with, let's say, over gigabit Ethernet speeds. Wi-Fi 6 and Wi-Fi 6E routers can actually offer 1,000 plus megabits performance. With Wi-Fi 6E, you could actually see 1.4, 1.5, 1.6 gigabits of wireless throughput. So significantly faster than even a gigabit Ethernet cable. But of course, that number is going to go down the further and further you get away from the router with your device. And so the goal is ultimately to always try to have the speed be higher than whatever your internet service provider is, or at least high enough that you're going to still have a usable experience for whatever you're looking for, whether it's going to be gaming or whether it's going to be streaming or whatever it might be. But let's actually get ready to get into this and actually talk a bit about this. And we'll kick it off, I think, with our first router that we do want to touch on, which is going to be the RT-AX1800S. So we've now had Wi-Fi 6 out for quite a number of years in terms of kind of our entire product portfolio. We really have the most comprehensive Wi-Fi 6 lineup that's out there. But there have been users that might be a little bit more constrained by their budget, or maybe you've got a smaller environment. Maybe you're just in an apartment. Maybe you're in a small, like a 2-bedroom house, right? You don't necessarily need the highest level of kind of coverage in terms of space, because we do manufacture routers and kind of mesh networking configurations that can offer 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 square foot of coverage. So we're talking huge spaces, right? But you just might not necessarily need that. And this is where I think the AX18S really fits in. It's $100 for this router. So it's very price aggressive in terms of its overall price point. But the really nice benefit, of course, is that it is going to be offering you Wi-Fi 6. And I think that's a really big benefit in terms of that if you talk about kind of all your current generation of devices, when we talk about, your smartphones, your laptops, motherboards, mini PCs, actually new televisions that are shipping, they're all utilizing now Wi-Fi 6. And if you still have a Wi-Fi 5 router, well, Wi-Fi 6 devices are fully backwards compatible with Wi-Fi 5, you're actually not fully maximizing the performance of that device. You could actually be having even faster speeds. You could actually have reduced latency. You can actually even improve your battery life. And this one is kind of surprising to people. Is like, how can a router help to improve the battery life? Well, the main reason is that if, let's say, you've got something like I don't have my smartphone here, but let's say, for instance, you've got something, and here we're networking, we're agnostic. So this is an example. If you talk about something like a tablet, like an iPad, which the newest generations come enabled with Wi-Fi 6. But if you had a phone, if you had a laptop, these type of devices that heavily utilize the battery, under Wi-Fi 5, the actual wireless part of that device has to wake up and refresh itself about every 100 milliseconds. So there's consistently some little kind of drain on your battery, because it kind of has to wake up to make sure there's an active connection and know where the router is and be able to handshake and kind of do everything that needs to be connected online. There are significant improvements to this type of let's say, awakening and resume process, and also coordination between the router and the actual client device that is being connected to the router, that actually can help to improve your battery life. So by moving over a Wi-Fi 6 device from a Wi-Fi 5 router to a Wi-Fi 6 router, you can actually have improved battery life outside of also improving your performance. So just because you have everything kind of quote unquote working doesn't necessarily mean the experience can't even be better by moving over to a Wi-Fi 6 router. So I think that's one of the really key parts that is, I think, beneficial about being able to have such a price aggressive router like this at $100. So let's go ahead and take a look here at this model, see what it looks like. And we'll also take a little bit closer look at the specifications. And again, talk a little bit more about how wireless plays out in terms of its speed and its performance and some factors like that. So here we can see we've got the router. It's a very clean, stylized design, nice modern angular kind of profile. You have your hardware LEDs right there, which help you to know when the unit's actually up and running, activity lights, so that you know that it's actually connected, and everything along with that. I'm always a big fan of being able to see activity LEDs. Of course, you've got your antennas. Okay, and if we go ahead and take a look at a little bit profile, you've got your venting right here. You might think, okay, what's the relevance in venting? It's important to actually a degree that we're not going to go into the nitty and gritty as far as all the specifics that we do in terms of kind of the design for the internal electrical components and the heat sink design and the venting. But there's a lot of work that we actually put into help to ensure that the product meets a reliable level of operation under consistent use. A router is generally something that you're going to leave on indefinitely, right? Many other things you'll kind of turn them off and on, but our routers, we leave them generally on 24/7. So it's important that they're kind of designed to be able to sustain a consistent level of use and a consistent level of operation, because they're pretty much always on, right? So here we can see on the rear connections, right, we've got our traditional 4 Ethernet ports. We've got our WAN port. So this is what would connect to your modem. You've got your of course, your power port right there. You've got a power button to be able to hard turn off and on the actual router. You've got your WPS button, and then you've got your physical reset button right there. So pretty straightforward. No USB on this model because it is a more price aggressive model, but probably for most users in this segment, they're generally not going to be using like a USB attached hard drive. So they don't necessarily need that type of functionality. And again, you could move up to a slightly higher end model that we have, like the AX55 or the AX67 that would be able to give you USB ports if you felt that you needed that type of functionality. Okay. So again, there we can see that model, and let's go ahead and take a look at the product page, take a look at the specs, and then also see how actually wireless speed overall plays out when we talk about kind of measuring it within a real world environment, and actually look at how it works with a couple of devices. Okay, so let me go ahead and load up the product page for this guy. I'm also going to make sure that I take a look at anybody's questions here as we're kind of going through anything. So give me 1 second right here. So Matthew, Matthew here says, how can I find an ASUS router that's good for LAN internet speed that is over 11,000 internet speed for less than 480? If you could clarify your question, because it doesn't necessarily make 100% sense. I don't know if you actually mean that you're talking about wanting to have a router that actually has higher than essentially gigabit Ethernet speeds. If that's the case, probably the best option that is underneath $400 is our RT-AX8600. That does offer 2.5 gigabit connectivity. So if you have an actual motherboard, or you have a device that has 2.5 gigabit Ethernet, or you want to add in our USB 2.5 Ethernet adapter or a PCIe card. So we make both. One you could add to like a laptop, and the other one you could add to a desktop for high speed Ethernet. That is a really, really great model. Okay. And we also actually just came out with an even more price aggressive model with the RT-AX8600S. Okay. So that's two models. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look here at the actual kind of specifications right here for this model, and help you to kind of understand a little bit in terms of knowing how to look at a model right here. So the first thing right here you can see is that we've got AX1800. That is going to be the actual speed for the router. This is the theoretical speed at 1800 megabits. So an easy thing that you can actually do is if we go over here to the tech specs, you'll actually see that this is broken down for you. The two important parts that we're kind of going to be looking at here is generally going to be what is referred to as the transmit and receive configuration. So this means that you have a 2x2 configuration for 2.4 gigahertz, and then a 2x2 configuration for the 5 gigahertz, which adds up in terms of kind of the antennas that we also see, where we can see that we've got 4 antennas on the unit. Generally, the higher this number, the higher the number the transmit receive, the more bandwidth that the router can have and the more simultaneous devices it can have. It does get a bit more complicated that, and we'll talk a little bit about that when we get to the actual next model up, the AX5400, and how antennas play into affecting things like signal stability and range and overall speed. But generally, the higher this number, the overall better the wireless experience will have, especially if you have more devices and you're looking for a broader level of coverage. But this is quite solid. It's a very good kind of, I'd say, balance in terms of, like I said, price to overall range and overall speed. Another important thing is that your devices that you have do have to match this type of actually specification. Almost pretty much all Wi-Fi 6 devices that are readily on the market, so phones, laptops, motherboards, televisions, pretty much anything that's coming right now with Wi-Fi 6 is generally a 2x2 based configuration. There are going to be routers that you'll see that will have higher end configurations, and to optimally get the maximum performance, your device would also have to be configured in that type of configuration. So that means that it would have to have a Wi-Fi 6 chip that is wired for like 3x3 or 4x4, or different types of configurations to get even more out of it. It doesn't mean that you won't always benefit from having a higher number of streams, but it is kind of plays into that a little bit. Another part is going to be the actual processing capabilities. This does use a modern quad-core SoC architecture. The speed here isn't listed on this one, but it is still going to be quite a bit of an improvement compared to much older routers. If you probably check your older routers, if you got Wi-Fi 5, it might even be just like a single core processor, maybe running at like 400 or 600 megahertz. Most of the new routers that you're going to see on the market are generally going to be either tri-core or quad-core based processors, and they'll pretty much always usually be over 1 gigahertz in terms of the speed. And then also even memory. You might be surprised that RAM is present on a router, but you will see that there's 120 megabytes of flash and 256 megabytes of RAM. The more that you have here, just like any type of device, gives you better performance. Okay. So let's go ahead and go back over here to just kind of some of the key specs that I do want to kind of call out here. And we're also going to talk, like I said, a little bit of kind of about range and speed and setup. So one thing that I do want to touch on right here is this is where we talked about, right, that you can see that 1800 megabits. Now, most of us are generally going to be aware that like when we have an internet service provider, your internet service provider might be like 100 megabits. It could be like 150 megabits. It could be like 200 megabits, right? But let me go ahead and bring up a little bit of chart here and show why generally having a certain speed is going to be important over range. So give me 1 second here to open something up for you guys. Here we go. And we're going to show you an example. This example right here is not for this specific router. This is actually for a different router. So give me 1 second here. Okay, this works. Okay, so here we go. So this is actually what you kind of have to realize when you're talking about kind of wireless. So what you'll actually see right here is going to be locations. So this is location 1 would be the closest to the router. So this would be probably underneath 10 feet, right? And then you can see as we move further and further away from the router, like as you get to like 50, 60, 75 feet away from the router, the number is going to go down. This is utilizing the router that I actually showed a little bit earlier, our AX82U. So this is a very good high performance based router. It is going to be higher performing than the model that I'm talking about right here, the 1800S, but it's just to give you an example of what I'm talking about when it comes to speeds. So we can see right here that we were able to achieve almost gigabit wireless speed, right? That means 945 megabits at that closest location, right? And then you can see a little bit further away, we were down to 929, and then we moved down to 770. And then right here, you can see at the furthest point away, 128. Now, keep in mind, this is not line of sight. We're accounting for a real world environment. There's different types of things that can affect your signals and all kinds of things like that. So if let's say we had a 100 megabit connection, so that's what we have from our internet service provider, it means even at level 4, right, the 4th location, I still have enough speed to literally be faster than what my internet service provider is offering me. So this is where I'm saying that having a higher number and the performance that you can have is really kind of the balancing act that you want, right? If you can try to match that, the performance you're going to get at even the furthest point away is going to be at least the speed that you have from your internet service provider, that's great. And then you can break down this number by kind of the devices that you use. If you consider that, like if you were watching like a 4K video, you know, on a video on demand service, that's probably going to be between about 10 to 25 megabytes. Excuse me, 25 megabits. That means you could even be running still simultaneous like 4K streams, gaming, listening to music, you know, on some devices, and you would still have enough bandwidth to kind of share out to different types of devices. So that hopefully gives you a little bit of an understanding when we're talking about how wireless plays out. And you see right here, that actually was with the PC device. Here, let's give you an example of what that looks like if you were to do this with something like a phone. Okay, so here we can see similar kind of results that with a phone, it's going to be maybe a little bit less than you would have with, let's say, something like the laptop, which we showed earlier, but you had 865 megabits, right, at location 1. And then you can see when we got to a further location, 279. Right. So again, this is important because, you know, you're going to be using your phone all over wherever you might be living, right? Whether it's going to be in, like I said, a 2-bedroom house, a 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom house, wherever you might be. So you want to be able to account for kind of that coverage. So that is that kind of why that number that we talked about originally there is important to you in terms of kind of understanding that 1800 megabits, right? So we go back here and we again talk about that number, right? 1800, right? That is what we're trying to account for. But do keep in mind that this number, right? It goes back again to that this number is split between either your 2.4 gigahertz and your 5 gigahertz bands, right? So usually there's a combination of those two together. So you can see right here, right? 574 is for the 2.4 gigahertz, and then 1200 is for the 5 gigahertz. So effectively, kind of when you add those up, you're getting your about 1800 megabits approximately, okay? So this is another kind of really cool technology right here is OFDMA and what's called multi-user MIMO. Pretty much without getting like super complicated, the main benefit of what you've got with something like this is going to be that modern devices, right, in terms of anything that's kind of like Wi-Fi 6, again, phones, tablets, laptops, things along those lines, now feature technology. It's called multi-user MIMO. And how this works is that that device can now simultaneously talk to the router along with another device at the same time. In the past, that wasn't necessarily the case. They kind of, if you want to think about it, it was like a queue. If you've ever waited in line for something, you have to wait for the person in front of you, and then it kind of keeps going on and on and on and on, right? Well, imagine now it's like just like if you're waiting in line, but there was another teller that came in, and all of a sudden now two people could be served at the same time. That's very much what multi-user MIMO is doing, is the router can now simultaneously work with multiple devices at the same time. This means you get lower latency, better reliability, and an overall better experience for the number of devices that you want to connect at one time. With most of us now having a lot of devices, 15, 20, 25, 30 devices that you might have that are all wirelessly connected, it's important for the router to be able to simultaneously work for this. And one kind of insight tip that you might find interesting is in prior generations of Wi-Fi 5, some devices supported multi-user MIMO, but not all routers always supported the multi-user MIMO spec. So in some ways, you can actually help to even get a better experience with Wi-Fi 5 with a Wi-Fi 6 based router because of its better kind of base specification support. But again, this is where if you've got Wi-Fi 6 based devices and you're not pairing them with a Wi-Fi 6 router, you could be limiting the overall experience because essentially the router doesn't have all the technology that it needs in place to be able to get the best performance and the best experience from those devices, okay? So let's finish just wrapping this up here with just, like I said, a couple of other little points that I want to touch on here. One, this is going to be pretty cool. So this is going to be our AI protection technology. I'll show you actually a quick demo of the way that this works here in a moment. So touch on this. Here you can see we're actually showing you a laptop in terms of how to set up the unit, but I'm going to show you actually we do have a great app. The app works at Android and iOS so that you can set up the unit entirely from the actual app. It literally will take probably most users probably about like 2 minutes, 3 minutes to set it up. It's a very simple and straightforward process, and it works on Android and iOS devices. Once you're done with that, you can pretty much manage everything from the app. You can reboot your router, you can monitor your router, you can update its software, you can even set prioritization options to give you a better experience. So let's go ahead and let's look at and see what some of the options might be in terms of how you can work with your router. And I'm also going to go ahead and double check on anybody's questions right here that might come up there. So give me 1 sec to connect here my unit so I can show you guys the interface. And again, I'm going to be showing it to you on a tablet, but again, this is, smartphone, doesn't matter, Android or iOS, doesn't matter. So let me just double check and see here if there's any kind of questions here. Do some routers help with security for non-secure IoT devices? Definitely, Dalton. And actually, that's what I'm going to show here, even with the AI protection technology. One of the really cool things is that the routers do feature integrated security technology that will protect all your devices. So even if that device doesn't inherently have the ability to have like custom software loaded onto it to be able to protect it from like malicious links or certain types of bots that might then connect to another service, you can essentially protect all your devices. That is really kind of one benefit of running security directly from the router, as opposed to, traditionally you'd have to kind of install software like on your desktop or your laptop, and that works great for those types of devices, but there's a lot of things that you might not be able to load any software onto, right? So how can you help to improve that? So let's go ahead and take a look and see what this looks like here. So let Make sure that I'm running on the right output. Sorry, guys. There we go. Okay. And move that over right here. Okay. So the first thing right here that I want to go ahead and show you is going to be, I think, probably the gaming option right here. So one cool thing that you're going to have on many of our gaming routers, if they say that it has it under listed feature, it's going to be something like our open NAT technology. So if you're like a console gamer, you probably know the pain of having to configure NATs, open NAT. You can now actually just go in there, select your game, and then it will automatically configure that that rule for you in the router. So it's a very simple process. We also have an optimized gaming mode where literally when you open it up, you can just click a button and then we'll enhance it. And essentially what we're doing is that the router has technology built into it. Make sure that the router does say that it supports this Game Boost technology, but essentially what we do is we monitor for game specific packets, because games themselves don't actually need a lot of bandwidth. They're just latency sensitive. So we can essentially prioritize those game centric packets above anything else so that we can help to ensure a better latency experience. Another one right here is going to be the AI protection technology. Pretty much almost all of our routers feature this, the AI protection feature. There's some really nice things like you can do a quick scan on your router. And what it will do is it will help you know, hey, are all my settings actually kind of safe and secure? So it can tell me right here, hey, you've changed your default username and password. You've got these things kind of blocked and you can't enable these options. And this is better for security. Whatever you kind of need a little bit of assistance in, it does that. But there is actually going to be a more specific protection item, which I'm going to demo here for in a moment, but I don't want to get to that. You can do some cool things like network diagnostics, where you can actually check things like your device, make sure that everything's working. Like if you want to test your modem, your internet, and your router, you could click a button and it'll actually talk to all of them and make sure that they're all working okay. That is built there into the app. If you have an Alexa-based enabled system, you can actually hook this up and your router can actually have close to about 20 plus commands that can work through your Alexa-enabled device. So that's pretty cool. Like if you wanted to reboot your router, if you wanted to set it to like an optimized like media mode for streaming, or if you wanted to open up guest Wi-Fi, you could do that all through voice and through Alexa services. So you can enable that. That's not enabled by default. Just FYI. So those are some of the really cool options that kind of you have in this easy and kind of accessible UI interface. And there are even more other options that we have within there. But let me go ahead and show you quickly what the AI protection experience is like. So give me 1 second here. And I'm going to show you what this looks like, guys. Okay, all right, I think I've got it set up here, so hopefully you should be able to see this. All right, so, oh, sorry. Well, it's outputting the video there, and we don't want to fully output the video. So actually, let me show it to you in a different way, just so you can actually see, not in the UI environment, just so you can actually see what it would look like. So give me 1 second here. And get this lined up here so you guys can see how this will look. Okay. So here you can see we've got a tablet, right? I'm going to go over to this web URL, and I've actually got a test URL here in the description information. Sorry. Let me load this up here. So right here, there's actually a URL. So imagine this is kind of like your messaging app. You had a messaging app and somebody sent you a link, or you had an email. Something is kind of going on where you've got some link that you would normally kind of click on. And you don't know that necessarily this link actually could compromise your system. It might have maybe like a bot attached to it, or it could have an injection kind of script or something that could essentially harm your system. So what would happen is when you click on this link, normally this would actually get loaded up. But what you'll see right here is that the router automatically block that link. So this was real time. I just showed you an example of it. That link is a flagged link. And right there, the router is pretty much telling you, hey, we blocked it. You can't access it. In the event that for some reason, maybe it was actually a valid link, which I've never had happen, you could still force click it and approve it to actually go through. But the great thing about the way that that feature works is that is a hardware-based feature. It is stored directly within the router. There's no cost to you. There's no subscription fee. This will automatically get real-time updated, and it will work for any device. So a laptop, a phone, a tablet, a desktop, any device. It also supports a secondary layer of what's called IPS protection, which means that if something was loaded on the system and then attempted to connect to an external server, pass over your information, if that server has also been flagged, then it will also block that access from occurring, even if your system has been infected internally on your network. So that's a really cool feature that we also have baked in to our routers, which is called AI protection. Okay. So overall, I think a pretty cool feature and level of functionality that we have for you guys there. Let me see if you've got any other questions right there that popped up. You see right here, Matthew, again, is asking, the brand new router that just showed up in Micro Center is the ROG Raptor AXE11000. Yes, that's this unit right here that I have on the actual table. It's got, of course, 6 gigahertz, 1.8 gigahertz quad-core processor, 2.5 gigabyte LAN. Yeah, this is a very high-end base router. Hey, GP, this is really kind of the flagship. Now, one important note, though, for anybody that's considering Wi-Fi 6E is do keep in mind to benefit from Wi-Fi 6E, you have to have Wi-Fi 6E client devices. So like our latest generation motherboards have Wi-Fi 6E. You've got laptops that are coming now with Wi-Fi 6E that we also offer, but you also do have to have Windows 11 to be able to support Wi-Fi 6E. So that is a very important point. If you have Wi-Fi 6E and you're still running Windows 10, it actually won't run at Wi-Fi 6E speeds. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Hey Bianca, where can I find the ASUS Ryujin 2? So yeah, Ryujin 2 is pretty much just starting to ship. I think that I already have reports from users that I've actually just started to order it from Newegg. I already posted that actually previously in our PCDIY group that we were shipping out to distribution channels, and probably within about 5 to 7 days, you would see it listed, and that's pretty much exactly what happened, where now we've got retailers listening up and getting ready to ship out those samples. All of our current new AIOs that are shipping right now in North America, I don't know if you're in North America, but if it's a North American-based unit that we've released into the channel, whether it's the Ryujin 2, the ROG Strix LC2 series, or the TUF Gaming LC ARGB, so all of our new AIO coolers, those all come included in the box with a 1700 bracket. You don't need to wait for a bracket or get a bracket. They will come in the box with the bracket, okay? Hey, Dalton, do you know if newer phones support Wi-Fi 6E? You will see it. I believe I have to double check on the spec information. I do double think that I think like the Pixel 6 Pro, take for instance, is one of the newest phones that is enabled Wi-Fi 6E. Many of the latest phones on the market, so iPhones, Samsung, Asus Zenfone, or ROG phone, all feature Wi-Fi 6, but Wi-Fi 6E is very new, so there's only a much smaller set of phones that have Wi-Fi 6E built in. You are starting to see a couple of them pop up, but you would have to double check the spec information to see if actually that device specifically has Wi-Fi 6E. If not, you'll get Wi-Fi 6, and that's still fantastic because as as we showed already there with Wi-Fi 6 in itself, you can still literally be getting gigabit class speeds. That means you can literally have your wireless connection be 4 to 8 times faster than a 10100 Ethernet cable, and in some cases, it could actually match the speed of a gigabit Ethernet cable. So Wi-Fi 6 is nothing itself to kind of scoff at in terms of the speed, but of course Wi-Fi 6E, it's a whole nother bracket in terms of performance. So if you're looking for the absolute best performance, then Wi-Fi 6E. Let's go ahead and now move into our next model here, and we're going to talk about the TUF Gaming AX5400. This is a pretty cool unit in terms of its design. I think it looks really cool. So let's go ahead and show this guy's off here. Give me 1 second here. I think I've actually got a cool little video for you guys. You guys can check out. Give me 1 second here. All right, so let's take a look at this guy. And this is the TUF Gaming AX5400. So this model is going to be about twice the price. It's going to be coming in at $200 as opposed to $100. And really the big benefit here is that, of course, you're still getting Wi-Fi 6, but it's going to be essentially a unit that's going to have broader coverage and overall faster performance. So if you remember when we talked about that 1800 megabits, this unit moves over to 5400 megabits in terms of its total bandwidth. So this is going to be just a faster router and overall a router that's better suited for those that really are going to have, I'd say, a higher class of ISP provider and also looking for just a higher level of performance. You are also going to get a router that does have a USB port on it, So we are going to go ahead and take a look here at the pictures and see what this guy looks like in terms of kind of all the specific ins and outs on this guy. And we're also going to talk a little bit more kind of on some of the design elements on this unit. So give me 1 second here. All right. So here we can see we've got the TUF Gaming AX5400, a very cool looking router. It's updated with the TUF Gaming ROG styling that's new for 2021. You can see right there that really kind of tough and aggressive kind of slanted design aesthetic. You've got all the, of course, the LED lighting right there. You've got, of course, still this is an interesting type of design. It's higher end than the prior model that we talked about, where this is going to be a 2x2 and a 4x4 versus the 1800, which was 2x2 and 2x2. So it had 2x2 for the 2.4 gigahertz and 2x2 antenna configuration for the 5 gigahertz, but this one moves to 2x2 for the 2.4 and then 4x4 for the 5 gigahertz. Okay, so let's. You can see there that cool little angled shot right here. We also have revised the overall antenna design right here, and I'll show this to you on the actual RT-AX82U, where we have a new locking base design. So this keeps a much more kind of rigid in place type of design for the antenna, so you don't have kind of as much warble or kind of concerns about the antennas potentially kind of moving or being unscrewed, which can affect their kind of performance and stability or even breaking. So this is a much more robust type of design that we've been incorporating on a number of our routers. There you can see kind of the front angular design, everything that comes inside the box, which is pretty straightforward. You got your standard setup cable, your instructions and information right there, and of course your power adapter. And do we have, I think, the rear I/O shot? Let me see if we have the rear I/O. I don't have the rear I/O shot, so we can show you that on the product page. So let me go ahead and load up this guy here on the product page. And again, this model is going to be coming in at a little bit more at $200 as opposed to the 1800S, which was coming in at $100. Okay, so here we can see we've got the 5400, and one of the kind of key differences is going to be, first and foremost, when we take a look at the back of the unit, is going to be that it does have a different type of port configuration set up, which is right here. So you can see that you've got your USB port. So that's going to be great if you want to attach like a USB hard drive or something along those lines. You've got your 4 ports right there, but you also have a dedicated gaming port. So the cool thing about the dedicated gaming port is if you just wire in, let's say like your PlayStation, you know, your Xbox, your Nintendo Switch, or your gaming PC, it will automatically prioritize that device, no software. You don't have to do anything. That port is kind of optimized immediately for a gaming experience. We also do feature technology called link aggregation, which means you can kind of have the 2 ports kind of combined together for a higher level of bandwidth. Most users do not need this function, but if you've got a higher speed internet service provider, this can be useful for you. Okay, and a lot of the other features that we talked about are going to be present, but this design is very interesting. So right here, these are all what are referred to as individual band antennas. So some antennas actually support dual band operation. That means that they work both on 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. But to maximize the overall coverage for this unit and to be able to really give you really great performance, we've actually gone with a little bit of a different design that's been optimized for this unit, where these are all individual bands. So they're either your 2.4 gigahertz bands or your 5 gigahertz bands respectively. And then along with specialized design and tuning that we've done on the unit, this helps to afford, like I said, really great coverage and really great stability. And here you can see flexible and scaleless mesh networking. Pretty much what this just means is that if you wanted to, you could set up multiple of these units to be able to have broader coverage. So you can see like one unit over here and another unit over here. You can set this up in the ASUS router app, where if you just wanted to add another router, you could just add the other router to there. We literally have about like almost 20 models that are compatible, and be able to go ahead and extend your network. If in a situation, maybe down the road, you need a little bit more coverage, maybe in your patio, your garage, you know, maybe, you know, the furthest bedroom or something like that. You find that, you know, everything was initially fine, but now you just need a little bit more coverage. This could be an option for you, and it's a great way to not have to replace your router and change all your settings. You can just add another ASUS router through ASUS AI Mesh and be able to extend your coverage. This is another, I'd say, often overlooked thing, but within our TUF gaming line, especially too, along with our high-end ROG products, we do really try to look at things like ensuring long-term reliability. So there's very robust designs inside to be able to ensure very good stability and reliability, because the router, when you're really using it a lot, you're heavily running it, you're using it 24/7, it produces more heat. So we actually have heat sinks in there with good specialized material. It helps to dissipate the heat. They all go through extensive humidity, I/O, stress testing, and EMI testing to be able to ensure a high level of reliability. And even little things like this, where higher tolerances in terms of your physical connections, you're plugging them in, we actually use metal for the actual RJ45 jacks themselves. Some actually competitors on the market will not actually use this type of design implementation, which is a more premium design. So even in small details like that. So a lot of the other features we talked about, like the optimization options, where you can prioritize like web browsing, you can prioritize instant messaging. I can show you quickly what that actually looks like. So give me 1 second, and I will show you what that looks like here lastly on the app. And then I'm going to take a look again at anybody's questions that they might have here. So give me 1 second here. Let me load up that, again, that app for you guys, and you can see what the experience looks like if we wanted to do what is referred to as quality of service. So this just means kind of customizing your unit for your experience. Yeah, okay, here we go. There we go. All right. So you can see right here, I'm in my management options. You can actually go through a couple of different ways that are even faster than this, but I'm just in the settings here. And then right here, some cool options. You can actually test your internet speed inside the router, which is pretty cool, but we can go right here to quality service, and you'll see right here that you have different options like work from home, web surfing, media streaming, gaming, and all you need to do is pretty much just select the item that you want, and you can see that right here, you can move it. Just move whatever you want. So if let's all of a sudden you were doing something, you're like, man, I want to go ahead and optimize for that, you can just go ahead and rearrange that. So you could go there, and then you'll see there's an apply button, and you could make the adjustment. I want to keep it what I have, so I'm not going to hit apply. But you could go ahead and easily make that adjustment. And that can be done all on the fly. So if just, one moment you want to make sure that you were getting the best media streaming experience, you could shift that over. And then if you wanted something else, you could shift it over again. Very, very easy to be able to adjust how you want your network to work for you. Okay. All right. So that is, again, the TUF Gaming AX5400. So let me just see if you've got any questions that kind of came up right here. Let me see here. Bianca's asking about the new power supplies. I think I already answered this in our PCDIY group. Let me go ahead and make sure to leave a link for anybody that wants to make sure to join our PCDIY group. But we're probably expecting the, I think, 1,000 watt to be the first model that we're going to offer, and that will be in sometime, hopefully in December, depending on ultimately, logistics and shipping and ports and things along those lines. But hopefully we will have that model be available in December. The rest of all of the other models in terms of our refreshed lineup will not be available until sometime in early 2022. Again, to stay up to date for all of that information, the best place I can tell you is to join our PCDIY group. I post updates in there consistently. And we also have a product release calendar that'll be updating, so that as kind of updates come in for projected timeline to release, you can check our product release calendar. Okay. Strix versus TUF. Yes, there's actually some differences. I'm assuming that you're probably talking about the GS AX5400 versus the TUF Gaming AX5400. Most of them are going to be predominantly aesthetic. They are going to be otherwise functionally very similar because they do use similar chipsets. This would also apply for the RT-AX82U, but there is some differences within the software, as also kind of other lighting elements. Like with the Strix models, you get like a more customizable like RGB front design interface. But predominantly from a kind of performance-based specification, they're going to be pretty similar in that regard. Any unmanaged switches? No, we're not looking to produce any kind of dedicated switches. Pretty much, we do have some switches that we have, but nothing new that is different than what we are currently already offering. So let's see, talking about the latest Ethernet ports, some motherboards get 2.5 gigabit Ethernet ports, some get 10 gigabit Ethernet ports, and some also get both. So what's the benefit? Pretty much the benefit is just speed. For most normal users, you probably don't need, of course, higher speed Ethernet connections. So most gamers and most general users are going to be fine with 1 gigabit Ethernet connections. But as the technology has become more refined and being able to be more cost accessible and scaled out to more products, you're seeing it get implemented. But as far as the benefit, take for instance, for me and my network, I actually have two. I have 2.5 gigabit based networking configurations and a 10 gigabit based network. And the main reason why I use it is because I do amateur photography, and of course there's video work that I do, and having essentially a higher bandwidth network allows me to move files around even faster than if I was using Wi-Fi, even really fast Wi-Fi like Wi-Fi 6. So that is really the main benefit. But if you're not heavily kind of moving files back and forth between one system to another system, you don't necessarily benefit from having 2.5 or 5 gigabit or even 10 gigabit based networking. It is a fantastic specification, but really it's focused at users that have the need for transferring larger files consistently from one system to another system. Hey, Zach, when will Spot the X and Helios be back in stock? I'm pending. I'm waiting for some updates from our product management team, but hopefully in December, we should probably have some updated availability for these two products. Could be a little bit earlier than that, but make sure and just tag me in the group. I think I've already responded to this post in the group where I'm just waiting for some updates from our product management team. No updates right now for anything on the Zen Wi-Fi side, but make sure to keep it tuned if you are interested in that, okay? We do not have any immediate plans in terms of making any RAM, but we will continue, of course, working with industry partners. Right now, we have more validation with partners across the industry than any other motherboard manufacturer, and we're definitely committed to keeping that in place. So don't worry, we've got you covered when it comes to that. All right, so next up, let's go ahead and take a look at one more product, which we've got new here, which is going to be the mini PC. This is I'm really excited about this. I don't know if you, how you guys feel about mini PCs, but they're one of my favorite pieces of hardware. So we've got the mini PC PL63. So this is a brand new form factor from us in terms of kind of the overall design, but it's a pretty cool unit. So let me go ahead and open this guy up here and you guys can see what we've got. Now, the really exciting part about this is our current PN series, which is even a little bit more compact and uses a lower wattage CPU, is that this is even a higher performing option. So here is the PL63. So the exciting part here is that this utilizes Intel's Tiger Lake series mobile CPU parts, the 11th gen CPU parts, which introduce some really cool and impressive architecture improvements along with a lot of platform-based improvements. So high-speed wireless, high-speed gigabit Ethernet, multi-gigabit Ethernet, right? 2.5 gigabit networking, Thunderbolt 4, USB 3.Gen 2, and a lot of other enhancements, including, of course, Xe-based graphics, which, especially within this type of compact-based form factor, is quite impressive. So you can see right here, we've got a all-metal body construction right here. We've got high-speed, super speed USB connectivity. You will see that these are both 10 gigabits in terms of their speed. So these are faster than even your traditional ports, which are only 5 gigabits. You've got a Thunderbolt connectivity right there. You've got your combo jack and LED indicator, and then, of course, your power button. This will come in an i3, an i5, and an i7 model. I'll go over the pricing in a little bit here. You can see right there, of course, the venting built into the unit, and we have a brand new thermal design which integrates a high-performance direct heat pipe and then a specialized kind of flow exhaust-based fan, which has been specially tuned along with Intel's new DTT technology, or their dynamic thermal technology, to be able to maximize the performance between the CPU and the GPU and the total kind of power that the system utilizes. This is tuned specifically by us in relation to this platform and can really offer some very impressive performance for such a compact based part. If you're looking for a system that's focused for kind of general productivity, general use, a media VIA kind of centered system, maybe something like a SAN NAS type unit configuration, you also have some very interesting options that you have available to you here. When we take a look at the rear I/O, because this is using Tiger Lake and the XE architecture supports up to 4 displays that can all be simultaneously driven. It's very impressive. You've got your 2.5 gigabit LAN right here. You've got DisplayPort, HDMI, and Thunderbolt. Of course, with Thunderbolt 4, that's 40 gigabits. And keep in mind, Thunderbolt can also offer you display output configurations. And then on the back, again, 10 gigabit USB and 10 gigabit USB. And then you have your power adapter. The unit, of course, as you can see, has high performance antennas already equipped on the unit. And those will support Bluetooth, the latest generation Bluetooth 5, along with Wi-Fi 6. So pretty much you get all the specs you could ask for. And the Thunderbolt connection is pretty cool because there is a power input support. So that means that if you've actually got a high enough power design from, let's say, pairing this with like a monitor that we offer that has Thunderbolt 4 support or some other type of device that does pass actually sufficient power, you can power it directly via the Thunderbolt port and not even have the dedicated 90-watt power adapter be utilized to power this unit. Here you can see the kind of just high-level angled shot of the unit. And the reason why we do cover this on the PCDIY stream is that while the graphics and the CPU is integrated in here, you can customize this by adding in your own storage and by adding in your own DRAM. So this supports DDR4 SODIMM-based memory, and it also supports, which is brand new to the mini PC segment, PCI Express Gen 4 M.2 based SSDs. It is backwards compatible with Gen 3 SSDs, Gen 3 M.2 SSDs, but it is pretty much the first mobile-based platform that offers you Gen 4 PCIe NVMe SSD support. And you also see there that it is fully compatible with VESA mounting, so you can put this on the back of any number of different type of setups, including monitors. And this is pretty much everything you get in the box, including your VESA mount, your 90-watt power adapter, of course, your Wi-Fi antennas, and all of that is included there inside the box. So I do not have a product page yet to show you guys because this is that new. It has not even been listed on our product page, but I wanted to show you this brand new product, which I think is a very, very cool unit. And as I noted, this model will be coming in terms of an i3, an i5, and an i7. So the i3 is the 1115 G4. So that's going to be the Core i3. That's going to be coming at 350. Then we've got the Core i5, which is going to be 470. And then we've got the Core i7, which will be 630. And all of these mini PCs do come with a 3-year warranty. Which compared to many other mini PCs on the market, many mini PCs actually only have like a 1-year warranty. So I think that is also a nice other value point that we offer for the PL63. So again, very, very nice spec unit. If you're looking for something that is going to be power efficient, offer very strong performance for general applications. I mean, you could even run accelerated productivity tasks on here with things like Photoshop, Premiere, DaVinci Resolve, Magix. There's a lot of work that Intel has done with optimizing the actual instruction sets and the AI and the deep learning networks that are now part of that new 11th gen architecture that they introduced on Tiger Lake on mobile that work really well in quite a number of applications outside of just general use. Of course, this does fully support Windows 10 and also Windows 11. And there's actually validation for those of you that may be running other distributions like Linux. You can check our product page when the product page goes live for Linux distribution support as well. Yeah, Dalton. So these are all, the great thing is that you're talking about standard components here. So there's nothing kind of proprietary, right? You have just standard access to the memory, standard access to the M.2 based SSD configurations. So you have a lot of flexibility in terms of how you can go ahead and kind of set that up. So let's see right here, Matthew, because that wraps up there our PL63. Looks like you've got, of course, a modern OLED-based television. Is using a LAN cable to my TV to watch it. It takes a long time to load and connect, and it seems like it's a little blurry. So I'm looking for a better router for my gaming room that can boost internet speed. Is there a way that can be split up each old router in my gaming room? Not 100% sure exactly on your question. Again, maybe a little bit more in-depth post you could actually ask in our PCDIY group, which I linked. But I don't know which router you have right now. But for sure, the first thing that I would recommend is having, probably considering looking at using things like the quality of service options. The quality of service options is a great way to be able to help to ensure that the media experience that you're looking for is optimized by the router. Because you have to realize that when you've got a lot of things that are going on within your network, whether it's people that are going to be listening to music, browsing items, maybe even uploading things if they're, uploading and posting to social media platforms, and all kinds of other stuff that's going on, your router has to simultaneously manage all of those things. But at the same time, if you're looking for the most responsiveness, it might be worth you actually setting a prioritization scale within the quality of service so that that experience that you want to be kind of the most responsive and the best is going to be ranked first. And then you can accordingly drop down those different types of experiences based on your preference, right? And I showed that a little bit earlier, how that works, where you can just go in and if you wanted like media streaming to be number one and gaming to be number two, you could do that. That's the first thing that I would recommend. The second item would be, in some scenarios, here you're using already a hardline connection, which is the optimal option as opposed to wireless. But also make sure that you've also double checked for newer firmware. Sometimes there is processing chips that are inside televisions that also can kind of affect certain aspects. And some manufacturers over time sometimes release firmware to help to improve the overall performance. But my first recommendation would be quality of service options. Playing around with that, and you can also even manage bandwidth. You could even limit bandwidth for certain other devices so that you could have a more responsive experience. From then there, of course, there are going to be options for moving to another router, but I wouldn't want to give you recommendations without knowing what router you actually have first. Hey, Sean, need an RX brown keyboard. Interesting. So you like those tactile key switches, right? Yeah, right now we don't have any plans for RX-based browns. We've got reds and we've got the blues. We're going to continue to monitor feedback. Browns tend to kind of be divisive. Sometimes people really like them. Sometimes there are people that don't. I personally entirely don't mind browns. I'm entirely okay with browns. I do like linears most of the time, but I can appreciate kind of the tactile bump that you get with something like a brown-based switch. So, it's a balancing act with switches. There's a lot of preference. There's a lot of different types of options. But, as we continue to see feedback from our community, if we see enough demand, we will look into putting out some type of maybe brown type variant, right? Which is different than kind of the clicky approach that we have when you talk about the blue switches that we have in terms of the RX switches. So as always, make sure to keep it tuned here to the PCDIY group or our streams for kind of up-to-date information in that regard. All right, so let me go ahead, and I think that wraps up pretty much all of our new product updates that I wanted to go through. So that includes, like I said, the RT-AX18S, the TUF Gaming AX5400, along with the mini PC PL63. The last thing that I want to give you guys a little bit of an update is going to be on our ASUS E-store. So some of you may or may not be aware that we do offer an ASUS E-store, and we recently relaunched the new version of this E-store. And so I want to show you actually the way that this site works. So give me 1 second here. Let me see if I can load up the page for you guys. Because in the past, if you guys were, okay, let's say, gonna look for something on the ASUS store, you would actually go to the ASUS store website. So it was like, it's actually asus.store.com, right? So it actually had a different site, but now we have kind of actually simplified it, and it's now built directly into our primary North American website. So let me show you what that looks like here. So here we've gone to www.asus.com/US. You don't have to put the US. It will generally auto direct to you based on the region that you're in, right? But let's say you wanted to look for a motherboard. So I'm just going to put in B550 in general, but of course, you'll get different things. So you can see already it starts to bring us different results up, but I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. And what you will see is that we have kind of a system that's already built in place that will give you essentially an active listing if that product is currently in stock and available on our e-store. So an example you can see right here, we've got our ProArt B550 Creator. You can see it is in stock and it's listed at $299. So you can actually click buy. There's also a where to buy link, which would actually direct you to different e-tailers that do carry the product. But if you wanted to buy it direct from ASUS, you could just click this buy button. Same thing here with this TUF Gaming board, this B550 Plus board. Now, somebody else asked about another product, right? And if we don't have it in stock, not for every product, but we are working on trying to integrate notification options options. So you can see there's like a notify me button, which you could then be alerted to when we have it back in stock on our website. This is not in relation to other channel partners like Amazon or Newegg, Micro Center, Best Buy, Walmart, or any of the wide number of partners that of course carry our products, right? But let's go to something like the Spotha X, which is another product that somebody asked about a little bit earlier. And you can see right there, because the Spotha X is not available, it just lists where to buy. It doesn't actually have a buy it now option, where of course, when we were looking at the B550 motherboards, which we did have in stock, it did have that. Okay, so that is something that you can go ahead and keep in mind. Also, you'll see there's a new tab that we have right here. Specifically, it says shop, and it gives you kind of specific sections. And we also now have a deals section. So you can just go and click on deals. And we're still working on this. This is kind of a work in progress. It's not 100% up, but just to let you know, hopefully as we have specialized promotions and deals, you will see those kind of get populated in here, and then you could click on those deals respectively. Okay. So just an update that I wanted to give you on the ASUS E-store. Okay. Oh, let's see. Hey, Fam Oric, will you do a video on how to overclock the Z690-E board? I already did. Check out our full in-depth video that I did on overclocking 12th series processors. I can actually show you the link right here. So let me actually show you that video, and I'll go ahead and link it for you in the chat as well. I will have actually a smaller, more kind of condensed video that will be specifically on highlighting overclocking, released probably in the next week or two, now that we just released our new UEFI updates that I've talked about recently. But we already did release a dedicated video that talked about overclocking. So let me go ahead and get this video for you in here. Here is the link for that video, right? But you will see it's right here. It is a full walkthrough, right? Right there, see, overclocking your 12th gen K series motherboard, right? So it's got pretty much all the information you need on pretty much how to overclock your system. There's a full demo and guide on how to use our AIOC technology, which is present on the Z690-E board, along with a lot of insights in terms of how you balance kind of stress testing, different things that you want to keep in mind, and some cool kind of general insights and tips and tricks. But like I said, if you're just looking for a shorter form, we'll have that coming in the not too distant future. I will have a dedicated video, and we'll also be releasing a dedicated video for our motherboards that do not have AOC technology, such as like this board right here. This is our TUF Gaming Z690 motherboard. Fantastic motherboard, but it does not feature our ASUS AIOC technology. So you have to do things a little bit differently if you want to kind of go about overclocking it. You have to go through the kind of much more standard manual method, which I still do kind of outlined as far as all the premise points that you'll need to be aware of. But make sure to just watch the YouTube channel, make sure and subscribe, and you will be able to find out about those videos once they get released. Let me see right here. Any other questions right there? If not, we'll see if we got maybe enough time to be able to jump into the PCDIY Builder Spotlight, show off some cool builds, guys. What happened to the stock on the RT-AX? Are they stuck on shipping containers? It has definitely been a challenge in terms of helping to maximize production and availability, as you, I'm sure, are aware of. There are definitely, logistical concerns in terms of overall kind of deployment to channel partners because of shipping infrastructure and kind of many other factors. We are working to get restock on that. And there are also, certain aspects in terms of other kind of sourcing and components that kind of play out into the entirety of things in the networking components that we offer as well that play out into this. But you will be seeing this model populate. We also kind of help to balance out some aspects in terms of production. We also have released kind of a supplemental model, which is new, which is the RT-AX8600S. It's a little bit different in terms of some of the key specifications, but if one of the reasons why you're stepping over to the 86U was to get 2.5 gigabit networking, you might want to take a look at that model, the RT-AX86S, but you will be seeing the RT-AX86U pop back up online, hopefully in the not too distant future. Will you be doing a video on how to do X570 Crosshair 8 Extreme? Yeah, I think I will. I don't know if I'll focus specifically on the Extreme, but AMD, of course, is still a fantastic platform. There's a lot of people I know still have interest in it. There's been a lot of content that's already been put out there, but there have been a lot of changes in terms of how AMD has offered different types of overclocking options since you know, Ryzen's CPUs came out. You've had everything from kind of traditional all-core overclocking to per-core CCX overclocking to PBO overclocking to PBO with curve optimizer, and then even on specialized boards that we have with like dynamic OC switcher, and even our core voltage stabilizer technology, which is new and not a lot of people know that is exclusive to the Crosshair 8 Extreme. There's a lot of different options. So I think I have to first kind of evaluate what makes the most sense of trying to give a wide range of ASUS users kind of information that applies to the majority of our boards, as opposed to being hyper specific to limiting it to just one board. But what I would probably do is maybe I'll have like a more basic general OC piece, and then maybe I'll do one that's a little bit more advanced that covers just our ROG motherboards, because our Crosshair series, so Crosshair 8 Hero, Crosshair 8 Dark Hero, Crosshair 8 Extreme, those boards offer some more specialized options that you might have on other motherboards. So it might be worth kind of subdividing and doing a little bit more of a tailored piece there. I don't know if I'll have them done before the end of the year, but you know, my goal will hopefully be maybe very early in the beginning of 2022. Maybe I can have those put out there. But I can tell you a very big focus for us in 2022 and for me will be trying to have a lot more video content outside of the streams, along with even more active kind of walkthrough streams to be able to give you guys insights that if you want to see real-time overclocking demos, you want to see you know, certain types of tests, performance videos. Even we're going to be doing some interesting things. I think from the motherboard side, there's not really that many motherboard reviews that exist. And so I've been talking with our team to actually do some performance videos, so that actually it kind of goes through talking about all the design points specific to one motherboard, but even showing you specific kind of performance demonstrations on the board. So if you want to see the board running at a certain frequency, certain memory, testing like the USB and some other things, I'm playing around with kind of some format ideas. So hopefully you'll see that as we move into 2022. All right, let me go ahead and I did not have my Builder Spotlight folder prepared, but let me open up my Builder Spotlight, see if I have some submissions that I can quickly jump into, and we will get into it. So give me one sec here, and we'll go get into it. So if anybody has any questions while I pull some of these Builder Spotlight submissions, then feel free and go ahead and drop your question. And I'm also going to go ahead and drop a link for those that are in the chat. If you want to submit your system as part of the PCDIY Builder Spotlight, then all you need to do is just head over to the PCDIY group. And once you're in the PCDIY group, just head over to Featured. It's in our announcements, and you can look for PCDIY Builder Spotlight. And you can submit your motherboard, or excuse me, not your motherboard, but your system, your build. It could be ATX, it could be mini ATX, it could be micro ATX, water cooled, air cooled. I don't care. It could be 3 years old. It could be you built it today. It doesn't matter. You could be custom modded. It can be not modded. We do have a requirement, of course. It's got to have ideally an ASUS-based motherboard. I'm not going to feature other manufacturers in our PCDIY Builder Spotlight. But outside of that, there's a couple of other little criteria that you can see there. But we'd love to be able to feature your build, and we've done a lot of builds this year. I might even maybe later before the end of the year do kind of like a recap, maybe pick like the top 25 builds. We've had some amazing submissions this year from amazing modders, amazing builders, and from you in the community. And I'd love to be able to kind of just maybe give a recap and see what you guys think as far as which ones were your favorites. So let me go ahead and finish loading up here the Spotlight form. I've got it opened up here. Kevin's asking, I'll repeat my question. Do you know if there's any ASUS RG Stealth hoodies left? I see they were not transferred from the old store. Ooh, send me a link, Kevin, PCDIY@asus.com. If you can send me an image of it. I think I know which one you're talking about. We got rid of most of the, not rid, but I think we sold out of most of the inventory that we had of the older apparel line before we moved to our new ROG Slash apparel. So if it was some of the older apparel that we had before the new Slash inventory came in, it might not be available, or they could just still be in the process of porting over some of it. Not all of a kind of quote unquote our inventory that was listed in the old e-store has been fully migrated over into the new e-store. So some of it is a work in progress of getting those items up there. So just kind of keep that in mind, is that we are still working on trying to get everything listed there. Okay. Bianca, what is the router in the frame called? If you're talking about this guy, this is the ROG Rapture AXE11000. I will go ahead and yeah, I can drop it in the link there. I'll drop it in the chat for you. I don't have the RGB lighting also set up on this unit, but when this is plugged in, it looks really cool. This whole ROG eye lights up in RGB, and it can be customized. All right, looks like we got a builder spotlight submission up for him. So let me go ahead and load up my images here. All right, so it looks like first submission is going to be from Josh. Oh, I think I know which build this is. This was a pretty cool build from Josh. So let me just load up his images here. Josh gets mad props for being truly a passionate ROG fan here. He totally took it to the next level with his build. So let me get images loaded up here, and I will have this ready for you guys here. One sec. Okay, all right, let's see what we've got here. We're gonna go probably a little bit out of order on some of these images, but that's okay. Let me also go ahead and actually let me get the name for his build first here. If he has one, has a name for a system. Tron Cyber Synthwave Racing. Oh no, that's the theme. Okay, name of his build is going to be Night Racer. Okay, so let's get that in there, guys. Night Racer and Josh. All right, cool. All right, so let's take a look at our first build here. So he shared, of course, an image of all his cool hardware. Pretty awesome right here. You can see we've got the ROG Helios. We've, of course, got ROG Strix graphics card. We've got a Ryzen 9 G-Skill memory, ROG riser cable. He's got the Falchion right here. It's the same keyboard that I'm using right here, the ROG Sheath. Gladys 3 wireless mouse. Awesome. Love this combination. It's a fantastic combination. ROG Thor. Power supply, Crosshair 8 Dark Hero, and even the Ryujin 2, brand new. So this is a flagship level AMD gaming build. I mean, this is about pretty much as good as it gets right now in terms of the hardware. Oh, first shot, we're going to go backwards. We're not going to focus first on the very first part of the build, but nice clean cable management right here. Helios has a good amount of room in the back, so he pretty much bunched it all together, used the ROG cable ties that came in there. You can see he's got the supplemental, of course, RGB controller in there. He's got everything wired in. He's also taking advantage of the integrated controller that we have there on the fan side. Overall, nice and clean. I don't really see any issues. The only thing that I may potentially do in this type of situation, I can tell you that I do, is sometimes I separate or overlay or strand some of the separate cables from different parts of the chassis in between different layers. And the main reason why I do that is to not have all the cables essentially in one bundle. That makes it easier for me that sometimes if I need to go back into the system, I can just attach, just access just the bundles that I need. So if I just wanted access to like my PCI Express cables for my graphics, those are kind of in an individual bundle. And while I love the fact that you use, of course, our ROG cable ties right here, I will sometimes add my own cable ties in different colors so that I can differentiate which ones I'm using, but definitely not needed. And credit to you just in terms of just offering the clear picture. So here we can see this is system. This is an awesome system right here. I mean, this is a full racing sim setup, pretty awesome right here, where you can see he's got a dedicated seat, he's got a 3-panel setup right there, and an overhead monitor. He's rocking an ROG laptop right here, G series laptop. He's got the sheath, the Falchion, the Gladius 3, and then of course the Helios. I love that he also did not do RGB fans to affect the overall nice RGB lighting that we have on the tempered glass on the front of the Helios, but beautiful and super clean setup. Might look pretty cool right here if he did something like the upsells that we now offer from IKEA to kind of offer a little bit of kind of fill spacing right here. That could be pretty cool. He could put his boxes there and like those upsells or something like that. But really nicely done, man. Super clean. So inside of the system, oh, he's got Horseman. That's cool. That's one of our course figures from the RG Worldview, which is pretty sweet. So he also has, so yeah, remember the name of the system was Tron, right? So you can actually see he's taking advantage of that Ryujin cooler with the integrated 3.5-inch display, and he's got some Tron in there running in the display. He's got the LAN streamer cables that are set up in there, RGB lighting set up for his G-Scale memory, and then the card vertically oriented. I think it looks really clean, really well done. Personally, for me, everybody knows I like horizontal GPUs. I think especially with the Strix card, it does look fantastic when that card is in a horizontal profile because you get to see that nice bold light bar and you see a little bit more depth and dimension. But this still looks really, really nice. And it does show off the nice aesthetic design that we did design for this card in the vertical orientation. And you still get this nice kind of soft diffused lighting, which comes from the light bar through the fan assembly. And he also even made sure, some people forget it, but he wired the cable for the RGB lighting on the Thor power supply. So he's got the RGB lighting down on the Thor graphics card, on the RAM, on the motherboard, looking really nice. He didn't swap out the fans here, and actually I think it works. Some people might say, hey, go with RGB fans here and then even swap out the RGB fan here. I like the balance of this because it gives you focused lighting, so I don't think you have to go with that. And these are, of course, great fans, Noctua IPPC fans. And if you really wanted to add a little bit of pop of, lighting back here, he could just add something like a simple, Fantex Halos fan frame, RGB fan frame, and not have to replace this fan and just run that cable to like the motherboard or something like that if you wanted to add in just a little bit of rear fill lighting, but it's not needed. And here we have that pulled out view, really nice and clean. This was pretty sweet right here with the large monitor right there. Super clean setup right here with the RG3 sheath, and then the Falchion and the Gladius 3. Really nice setup. I dig those nice kind of soft blue tones. It looks really, really nice. And here's no RGB lighting, which you can still see it looks great, right? We're going with the gray tone aesthetic, and he's also reading out that nice temperature information and kind of stat information that we give you with the Ryujin 2, which is pretty sweet. So you can customize this, you can change it up a lot of different ways. And that's another nice difference. You guys notice that one thing that we did with the Ryujin 2 is that instead of the actual tubing running out here to the right, which would bump up against the memory, this new design, everything was moved down to the bottom, so it makes it easier from a cable routing perspective. And there we have it lit up all just in blue, and the blue looks really cool. I'm torn. What do you guys think? Do you like the red or do you like the blue? Let me go back to the red. So there's kind of like our red with some blue. And there's with the blue. The blue is pretty sweet. I could go either which way in terms of kind of that feel. It almost kind of just depends. And the cool thing is with the ASUS Armoury Crate software, you could create a profile for your RGB lighting that you could even have it change. Like one game would load in just blue profile, and then another game you could have it load within that like red profile. So you could even have it change dynamically based on what you're doing. Like if you're gaming, you have one kind of color profile preset, and then if you're not gaming, you could have another color profile preset. Overall, very cool system. Let me go ahead and leave it. We'll toggle it back and forth a little. Well, let's focus on our system here. So this is his system. So let me bring up here. Give me one sec to bring up his actually form here. Sorry, guys. And let me just get his form up here so I can actually take a look at it. Make sure I got his information, and we'll go over his build here. So give me one sec. We'll load back up his system image right there. Okay, cool. And let's see. So Josh's build here. It's not his first build. It's not a sponsored build. Have a theme: Tron, Cyber Synthwaves Racing is the overall theme. So Tron, of course, you know, is a movie, and then Cyber Synthwave, which makes sense, kind of in that whole Tron vibe, and then racing, which of course makes sense because you got a sim racing setup there. What are 3 words to describe your build? Is dark, clean, and fast. I think that definitely applies. Name of the system is called Night Racer. Hardware, I think we already went over in the very beginning. We talked about all the hardware. It's about $5,000 plus for the total cost of the system. What is he most proud of? The clean aesthetics, an all-black build with tasteful RGB. And I agree, it's not RGB overload. I like that he had a targeted kind of theme in terms of the colors and the selections. They're purposeful, they're clean, and they're well executed. And I think it also shows that the monochrome kind of accents and designs that we picked give you flexibility, because he's got that really cool kind of blue vibe that we had. And then we also have this one that we're seeing right here, which is a little bit more in the red. And keep in mind, a lot of this changes that even right now, the color that you're seeing, kind of the vibe that you feel will feel different when the lighting's off. And we'll show those pictures off again there. Anything that he would want to change on his build right now? Nope, he's really happy with it. Took him about a week to put together the system. He uses it mainly for gaming and sim racing. Some, of course, Corsa competitive racing, F1 2020. What about Forza? The new Forza, man, looks absolutely stunning. PGA Tour is also something he plays, CSGO and MTGO. So overall, some nice range of games. His favorite ASUS function feature is the Armory Crate software to be able to kind of control all that RGB lighting that he's got there in his system. And overall, it gets a thumbs up for me, man. Very cool build. Definitely nicely done, nicely executed. Let's go ahead and recap just some images for us there. We can go to our next build, but really nicely done. And again, what did you guys think? Blue or the red? Which one did you guys prefer? I think they both looked great. All right, let's go ahead and go over to our next build here. I like the red. Zach says he likes the red. Richard, yeah, it looks amazing. I'd agree. I think both of the builds look great. I mean, excuse me. Well, both of the lighting schemes on the build look great. So, and I think most of us would probably agree. You know, we would be more than happy to to take Josh's system off of his hands if he wasn't happy with it, right? So, not a big issue there. So, let me go ahead and go over to our next builder's spotlight here. So, give me 1 second. Oh, this looks like a pretty cool. We're going to, I think, a water-cooled system here. Got a couple of different images here, so let me load these guys up here. Oh, wow. Oh, cool. This is, wow. Man, he did this fast. Ladies and gentlemen, we've already got somebody with a Z690 gaming system that's submitted on our PCDIY Builder Spotlight. This is going to be from Kevin. And does Kevin have Kevin does not have a name for his system. So let me just go ahead and just put something in there for him. I'm just going to put this as an ROG C690 build. All right, guys. So let's go ahead and take a look at Kevin's ROG Z690 gaming build. This is pretty sweet. And you'll also get to be able to see the really cool Anime Matrix lighting display that we integrated for this generation, which, you know, it looks great in the pictures, but it's a whole nother thing to actually see it lit up. And I think it looks fantastic. So, all right, we got all the images loaded up in here. All right, Kevin's system. Sorry, guys. Normally, I do prep these beforehand, so it's taking me a little moment here just to get these all up and running for you guys so I can see everything here. And let me bring over his submission form so I have it. Okay. All right. Let's take a look here. Oops. There we go. And is that right? Okay, there we go. All right. All right, let's take a look here. So this is Kevin's first shot. Don't have those organized. Looks like probably the distro plate. Okay, cable management. He included the cable management. We can see we're dealing with a pretty big chassis right here. He's going to have a Corsair-based system because we can see he's got the commander node that's in there. He's got an RG Thor power supply. All right. Overall, nice, clean cable management. I mean, it's always going to be a challenge when you got RGB lighting because there's lots of cables. You've got your power cables, and then you got your fan cables, and then you got your RGB cables. So you've got a lot of cables going on, but this is overall clean. It's well done. It's reasonable. And also, you don't see this, right? So it's not that much of a concern, right? All right, interesting here. So we've got a hardline tube with some different bends and some different routes. You know, I'm personally a fan of soft tubing. Everybody is trending, of course, towards using hard tubing, and I get it. You know, a lot of people just like kind of the symmetrical aesthetic, but part of the reason why I like soft tubing is a more sometimes fluid approach to the way that tubes are laid out. And this is where actually I give Kevin credit. He didn't choose kind of just natural bends to kind of go with as far as kind of straight perpendicular lines, which for me, they can look good, but sometimes it's a little bit too the same as kind of every single type of build when they're using that, especially if you're using a distro plate. So I appreciate when people are willing to kind of go and try something different. And here, definitely, I think there could be a little bit of improvement in some of these runs, but overall, it's still pretty nicely done. And I like kind of playing around with some depth and dimension here at kind of the way that the approach was taken for some of these tubing runs. I really like that he respected the design aesthetic, like take, for instance, here in the IO, where he doesn't have something that's hard running over this. And even for the RGB DIMMs himself, he doesn't have something that immediately crosses over, although, of course, the flow monitoring is in line of sight here. Now, an interesting thing I would ask Kevin is the motherboard actually has headers, and you can't see them, but they're all the way over here. It has integrated water flow monitoring and temp inlet monitoring. And if you have the right adapter set up to that, you can have the motherboard report to you that information, and you don't have to have one of these right here. So unless you physically wanted to see that, is that maybe something that then would allow you to have like a cleaner flow line, right? Because you could just run that straight tubing as opposed to having this there. But it still looks cool. It looks technical. I love of course, the RGB lighting here. You get to see the RGI down there at the bottom by going with the vertical based design. And I love this actually orange. This orange is a really cool color. With blue, it's a very interesting kind of contrast. So here we can see the system right here. Then the fluid color actually gets an entirely different aesthetic. This actually looks like a really cool shot. This is a Corsair-based chassis. Nice look there in terms of the overall fans and the color scheme. I like this two-stage color where we got against the blue and the orange, but again, that almost looks red in terms of that color scheme there. Yeah, I agree with Kevin. Kevin's point right there. I love the matte coating on the tubing. I agree with that. I think it's a really cool, that kind of that frosted look. So here we've got a close-up shot of the motherboard. You can see that anime matrix. So this is, of course, the newer board, right, that we've got. And you can see this is using the, excuse me, not the anime matrix, which is on the extreme board, but the Maximus Z690 Hero board. This is our polymorph RGB lighting display. So we actually have kind of specialized multiple layers in there that then actually have like different patterns that you can pick, and the patterns then can actually be customized with different types of RGB lighting, and it gives it a really cool design aesthetic. He's got the Corsair Dominator DDR5 memory in there. Looks really nice, and again, this frosted kind of matte tubing looks really great, and you can also tell he's got that beautiful, of course, block on there on the card. But overall, nicely done. It's clean, it's cool, and again, like I said, that really pops there. It looks great in terms of that design. We can see we've got that DDR5. His cables are all kind of tightly crimped in there, nice and clean, nothing that looks like it's an issue. Credit to also making sure he's got both of the supplemental power connectors in there. It's not a requirement, but hey, you got your EK water block in there. Of course, he's got the vector block, right, for his ROG Strix graphics card, which looks great on there. And there, now we've got the full kind of customized let up. And here you can see it looks very different in the dark with the kind of the profiled lighting than if we go all the way back to that first shot where you can see looks like an entirely different system, right? When you have those lights on and you don't have all your lighting off. Excuse me, you have the RGB lighting off, right? So here you can tell none of the lights are on the fans, and you just see the fluid. But now let's go to that kind of more final shot, and that's fantastic. I love the way that looks. This again, orange, but in some shots it looks red with that white. I think looks fantastic. I think that looks really, really nice. And then you've got of course, the Thor down there. I don't know if he's got the Thor wired in with the RGB cable to control it in sync, because that would be I don't know if he has that set up in there, but overall, really, really nicely done. So it's very clean, very cool. And I love the overall, like I said, color play that we've got here. Again, I think I would maybe remove the flow monitoring and I would use what's on the motherboard. And also, I think the black here actually maybe works against you a little bit. I would love to see maybe a little bit of contrast color, like actually maybe even going to orange cables that maybe even have some white, or maybe orange, black and orange, or maybe something to brighten this up to add a little bit of kind of indirect fill. I think could be really interesting. But these look great. Don't get me wrong. I think it looks fantastic, but I think I might, if it was me, I might add something there. I don't think you need streamer cables like RGB. I think you could just do that through some nice custom cables, right? That might be my kind of recommendation. And there's his full setup right there. Very cool, man. Very cool build. I really like the way that turned out right there. So let me go ahead and see what we've got right here in terms of his overall submission form. So this is Kevin's build. Not his first build, not a sponsored build. A theme, not specifically, but he envisioned it with black and frosted white and orange. So I was right when I called it orange. So yeah, he wanted to have black, frosted white, and orange. 3 words to describe the build: clean, simple, and sleek. Does his build have a name? No name. As far as core components, this is pretty much flagship status right here, guys. This is cutting edge. He's got a Core i9-12900K, an ROG C690 Maximus Hero board, a Thor 1200 watt PSU, an ROG Strix 3080 white. Oh, some of you guys are going to be a little bit shedding a proverbial tear right there for the white series graphics card getting stripped and putting a water block on it, but still a fantastic card to water cool. You get amazing performance from it. That's all inside of a Corsair 7000D Airflow edition. He's got the RGB Dominator kit, DDR5 first edition kit there, 64 gigs. He's also running a Corsair XT 2 terabyte NVMe drive. Got ton of Corsair RGB fans, right? QL140 and QL120s. And then pretty much all the water cooling is all EK. So quantum velocity block, vector Strix block, torque compression fittings, and then a 360 radiator that's also in there. He's also got a black ice front radiator in there, and then looks like Alpha Cool pumps. And then the distro plate is from Singularity Computers. And then he is using tubing from Thermaltake, the V Tubler PETG. And then that pretty much wraps out his hardware. Budget all the way around was about $6,000. What aspect is he most proud of? The hard tube water loop. I would agree that in that color scheme, it looks great. And I give you a big thumbs up for your non-traditional kind of runs that, you didn't go with kind of these just hard perpendicular lines. Anything he would change? Nope. It took him about 3 days, and he plays some Forza 5 and then Back for Blood. And his favorite feature is the ASUS Q release button and AI overclocking. Very cool. 2 awesome features on our Z690 motherboards. AI overclocking, an easy way to get more out of your CPU, and Q release, the simplest and easiest way to eject your graphics card. So very, very cool. Overall, a very cool build, man. Kevin, you're getting a thumbs up from JJ. I definitely approve. All right, we're going to go ahead and take a look at one more build, I think, guys. Let me go ahead and just get this one loaded up here. See if anybody's got any questions. So give me 1 second. And get this loaded up for you guys. Let me see any questions right there. So sorry, question here is going to be how much megahertz does RAM from Corsair Kevin set up? So he didn't actually list specifically the frequency for the DDR4. I think those kits, they're 5400 megahertz if I remember from the Corsair kit. I don't think that they have anything higher than that right now. So I'm pretty sure those are going to be 5400 megahertz. Yeah, I don't know the configuration that he's running as far as he didn't note that as far as whether he bought like a 4 DIMM kit or if he bought a 2 DIMM kit configuration and duplicated it. But we can definitely check with him. We can tag him in the group and we can find out. So let me go ahead and see if we got one more build that we can bring up here. In 1 second, guys, if I can get one more in here, I will. Oh, great. Yeah, this is a version 2 of a build that I absolutely thought was fantastic the first time around, and it got even better, I think, the second time around. Although the first one had a beautiful kind of more orange and kind of warm color scheme, this one went for a little bit of a cooler color scheme with kind of blues in it, but both were stunning and really just amazing in terms of their overall kind of their look and feel. So let me go ahead and load this one up here, and we will get this on the road. Give me 1 second to load this up here, guys. All right. So this is going to be a mini ITX based build, and really one of the most impressive things that I love about this build is that this is a pretty much kind of custom modded solution. So if you guys remember last week, we showed off actually quite a number of really nice water cooled builds, but we showed off the Lizard build, right, which featured a lot of kind of customized design in terms of kind of the chassis. And here we've got something else that's very similar in that regard, where you really have to appreciate the creativity and the ingenuity to kind of not go with, you know, just an off-the-shelf chassis, right? You're actually doing it yourself, and you're trying to figure out how you can have something look that, you know, just has a different, you know, look and feel to it. And that's definitely what we have here. So we've got our images loaded up, and let's check out this system. So this is going to be, what is the name for this system here? This is by Alessandro, and Alessandro's system here is going to be, yeah, this is the Onda V2. So if you guys know, probably sure many of you know that when I talk about this system, you probably know what I might be talking. Probably know which system I'm talking about here. So let's take a look. All right, so this is right here, Alessandro's Onda V2. I mean, this is just stunning, right? I mean, there's no other way that you can, I think, go about it, right? I mean, look at this beautiful just work that's done here in terms of offering this entirely kind of unique perspective. It's got an RG Strix Mini ITX based board. Interesting choice here. You let directly exposed, right, the M.2 based SSD. You can see the beautiful hard lines that are there, right? And just how kind of the motherboard almost floats there in the image, and then it's on this beautiful kind of pedestal. It's really an amazing looking build. Really, really stunning in terms of its overall kind of look and feel. And I think the symmetry, but fluid kind of balance that it offers. And we can see a closer look as well, taking a look at the system. A really nice integration there with those hardline runs. I love, again, that we're paying some homage here to not kind of fully covering over the IO shroud here on the Mini ITX base board. And even these, I think this is the G-Scale Royal kit, but I love this kind of like effect that you have that almost simulates the same type of effect that you have inside here, the reservoir, right? So it looks really, really, really cool, right? And then these, I don't know what material this is, if this is plexiglass, this is acrylic, you know, what he's kind of cut this off, but I love the translucentness and the color play on how this picks up the lighting, and it has, you know, that kind of smoked appearance, but it has just that lip that's picking up that lighting in there, right? It's a really, really beautiful just level of detail in there that when you kind of look at it all together, you see how that just ends up kind of playing out, but really stunning in terms of the overall look and feel. And then this right here, of course, is where you see how this is coming out, right? Where you can see that this is all dark and it doesn't have any color, but that's where you don't even realize that all behind that, you've got the rad, and that's where your fans are. And that's where the RGB is giving you that light to then play off essentially this fishbone kind of design, right? I think if that was the original inspiration, I don't remember 100%, but that's what really kind of adds that really unique aspect. But you don't realize that until you go to the back, because there you don't even see the fans, right? It just looks like this really cool, interesting thing, and then bam, you go there and you see the fans. Another look right there, and now from this other angle, you see the beautiful look right there in terms of the water block. That's a beautiful looking block, and then of course, you see, again, your fans right there on the other side. different angle right there. And that's got a really cool look to it, because now you get to see the balancing act of both, right? You get to see the water block right there. You get to see the CPU block. You get to see your res. And then you get to see those beautiful chromed out just runs right there with the hardline tubing. And to me, this is even better than the first version. But the first version has a really beautiful warmth to it because you went with these kind of orange tones too. So it's hard to say which one is better. And then even look at here, this is beautiful in terms of this finishing work that's also on this base, this pedestal. Overall, stunning build. So let me go ahead and bring up his submission form here, and we can give Alessandro his credit for just this amazing work that he did on this build. So let me go ahead and load up his build again here. Let me put it on. I think maybe the coolest image is that one. Yeah, I think that's coolest looking system right there. Okay, so let's see. Alessandro's system right here. Not his first build, not a sponsored build. Does the build have a theme? Not really, but the design entirely my idea, and it took inspiration from the waves. Onda in Italian is for wave. So that's why it's called the Onda V2. So onda means wave. So that's the reason why you have those waves kind of patterned there in the back, right? The crescent moon and the dinosaur's rib cage. Oh, that's really cool. So that's what you're simulating. So you got waves. So there's some water kind of play in there. The crescent moon, which you can see is clearly kind of evident there. And then a dinosaur's rib cage. Those are three really interesting points of inspiration right there. 3 words to describe the build is unique, innovative, and classy. I would 100% agree, all of those. So what's the name? It is called Onda V2, and as he mentioned, it stands for wave in Italian. It's V2 because the first version of the design was made last year, and it was a prototype made out of wood, and with the help of Hydra Mini, with the Hydra Mini case. Onda is now a fully scratched build, which this is the reason why I think it's even more impressive, because last year, like you said, he was leveraging kind of a chassis, but he did a lot of custom work to, of course, give you the entire feel. But now he's got an entire scratch build with an improved structure and the possibility to use different types of materials for its parts, which I think you can see is evident throughout the overall build itself. So core components he's got here, he's got an ROG Strix X570-i gaming, RTX 3070 with an alpha cool water block, a Ryzen 7 5800X, G-Skill Royal Elite memory, and then from there, Fire CUDA 520, 512 gigabyte NVMe SSD, Seasonic SGX 650 power supply, and then Alpha Cool water cooling pretty much for all the key blocks and items, and then Corsair L120 fans. Budget all the way around was roughly probably about $6,000. The 15 millimeter smoked acrylic was really expensive. So yeah, when I said that was it acrylic, that's what I thought. And I can imagine the quality of getting really high quality acrylic and having that smoked effect, I can imagine was not a cheap cost, especially getting it custom cut to those type of dimensions, depending on whether he did it or he cut it after. Either which way, it's not something that is going to be cheap. Anything that you would change? Honestly, no. I had the chance to perfectly design my system thanks to the first prototype. So, you know, this is kind of like what they say with movies, right? If a sequel is done really well, it should always be better than the first version because you can learn everything you want from that first attempt. And that's what he did, working with that first Onda V1 and then now moving to Onda V2, right? So how long did it take him to build a system? If we don't count the months looking for a graphics card and some other kind of just time issues, he would say that it took a couple of months in general in terms of designing, prototyping, and then ultimately putting it all together, making and building the system. So what does he use the system for? He actually sold the system, so he doesn't use it personally, but he does. The new owner does use it for gaming. Let me see here. His favorite overall kind of thing in terms of just ASUS is this: he just loves the overall kind of quality and experience for really ASUS motherboards, right? Is that they fit his look and feel really well. And overall, just the experience of just having something get up and running works well, and having a stable and reliable system, I think, is what he appreciates. And it really kind of aligned with the look and feel that he was looking to achieve for the overall system. Alessandro, I think maybe one of my absolute favorite builds for the entirety of 2021, and really, I think many of my favorite builds that I've maybe seen really in the last 5 years. I give you a huge amount of credit. It's really a stunning build, and kudos, man. It is really a fantastic build. So thank you so much for submitting it here to the PC DIY Builder Spotlight. It's a great looking build. All right. That, guys, I think that's going to wrap up our PC DIY stream for today. And again, we will probably have even a more lengthy PC DIY Builder Spotlight next week as I get a little bit more chance to kind of make sure to go through submissions and be able to put them all together ahead of time. But with that, guys, thank you guys so much for joining us for the PC DIY stream this week. If you guys have any questions, comments, feel free to go ahead and drop them in the comment section. If you're checking us out on YouTube, if you're checking us out on Facebook, Twitter, wherever it might be. If you're watching us up on follow-up on terms of video on demand, right, wherever it might be, if you can leave us a like, follow, subscribe, whatever it might be, that would be fantastic and it would be appreciated. So until next week, with that, guys, take care, take it easy, enjoy the rest of your week, stay safe, stay healthy, and best of luck with your builds. Take care, guys.